En cette journée internationale de la francophonie, il me fait plaisir de partager avec vous les messages des 6 gouverneurs de la Nouvelle-Angleterre qui ont tous déclaré mars 2022 le mois de la francophonie dans leur État respectif, et ce, en reconnaissance de notre amitié et de notre héritage commun. Je vous invite à les écouter attentivement, ce sont des messages touchants et inspirants. Chers gouverneurs, chers amis, bonne célébration de la francophonie à tous et à chacun d'entre vous. Merci.
Hi, I'm Governor Ned Lamont. I am a Francophile, and I want to say a shout out for Francophonie Month. A couple of things worth remembering. Number one, Connecticut has more trade with Quebec than any other state in New England. We do a lot with France. It's an important trade relationship, but more importantly, it's a moral bond. I remember 20 plus years ago when the World Trade Center went down and Le Monde had a headline, Nous sommes tous les Américains. I mentioned that the other day when it came to Ukraine. We have a bond when it comes to our moral values, when it comes to heart, when it comes to being solid in behalf of human rights and looking out for each other. Thank you, France. Thank you, Quebec.
Each year during March, the international community celebrates the culture and heritage of French regions around the world. This year, I'm proud to join in the celebration by proclaiming March as Francophonie Month in Vermont, to recognize our deep ties and shared history with Quebec. Our friendship with our neighbors to the north is vital to the economic and cultural fabric of our state. In a normal year, over 1.5 million from Quebec visit us here in Vermont and contribute hundreds of millions to our economy. Quebec is also our largest trading partner at $2.2 billion between us. In fact, is so important to our economic future, we opened a trade office in Montreal, our first and only outside the state. I'm confident our ties and partnerships will only grow stronger in the years to come. And with that, I'll sign the proclamation.
Bonjour to all Francophones in the great state of Rhode Island. I'm Governor Dan McKee, and I'm honored to celebrate March as Francophonie Month here in the Ocean State. Rhode Island is home to some of the strongest ties between Quebec and the United States. Each year, there is $400 million in trade between Quebec and Rhode Island. Woonsocket is part of the Franco Route, the historical and cultural tourism route that connects our northernmost city throughout New England. And Woonsocket's own Aram J. Pathiev was the first French-Canadian elected governor of Rhode Island and one of the first French-Canadian immigrants elected to statewide office in the United States. The legacies of the original French-Canadian settlers and their love for knowledge and creativity lives on in today's residents scattered across Blackstone Valley and Rhode Island. I'd also like to recognize the Quebec Delegation Office in Boston and the Museum of Work and Culture, which celebrates our state and region's proud industrial and immigrant history. Thank you, or should I say, merci.
Bonjour. This is Maine's Governor Janet Mills. On the International Day of La Francophonie, we celebrate the bond between Francophonie regions around the world. Maine shares over 200 miles of border with Quebec. Our history and families and businesses and values have been intertwined for centuries. Today, 1 in every 4 Maine people identifies as Franco-American, and French is the second most spoken language in our state. L'État de Maine est compris de plusieurs communautés françaises partout. Ici, on se trouve les villes populées de Québécois, d'Acadiens et les gens de la France. Québécois accents, cuisine, and culture can be found in every corner of our state, from Biddeford to Fort Kent. Many of our hallmark institutions and beloved communities bear French names and reflect Maine's Francophonie heritage. Maine and Quebec's economies are also deeply connected. In a typical year, nearly 500,000 Quebec tourists come to Maine and spend several hundred millions of dollars, and Quebec-based companies employ 1,500 Mainers. The Quebec government actively contributes to the legislature's Franco-American Day in May, where business is conducted in French and where honorees are inducted to the Maine Franco-American Hall of Fame. We were not always as proud of this shared history and culture as we are today. There was a time when speaking French in Maine was considered shameful outside the home, and children were taught to blend in by speaking only English in school. That's turned around, though, and such bigotry, which could have cost Maine an important cornerstone of who we are today, would have survived, but organizations and groups have been working hard to restore our pride in the French language and in our own history. Groups like the Franco Center in Lewiston, they bring language events to people old and young, and they inspire people to learn about French culture. And new Mainers from Francophone countries are sparking a new interest, a renewed appreciation for the French language across our state. So given all of that, as the governor of this great state, I am pleased to proclaim the month of March as Francophonie Month in Maine. Let all Maine residents celebrate the French language, celebrate French culture, and the contributions of Franco-Americans to the history of our great state. Vive le Québec, vive la Maine. Merci.
Recognizing Francophonie Month for March 2022, whereas the French language is spoken by about 300 million people in more than 90 countries and on 5 continents, and the speaking of French is an expression and an affirmation of a people's cultural identity, and whereas March 20th, 2022 is the International Day of La Francophonie, which celebrates the French language and its worldwide presence and influence in the spirit of equality, reciprocity, and solidarity. And whereas individuals of the French and French-Canadian descent constitute the largest ancestry group in the state of New Hampshire, and whereas a strong Francophonie presence has existed for centuries in New Hampshire, from the first French explorers who viewed the White Mountains while charting the North Atlantic coast, the French soldiers who arrived at Portsmouth to support the War of American Independence, the strong 19th and 20th century French-Canadian immigrant community, and the all-French-speaking First New Hampshire Regiment in World War I, to today's thriving Francophonie immigrant population. And whereas many institutions and places in the state of New Hampshire, including Mont Lafayette, the highest peak in the Franconia Ridge, bear French names and reflect this continuing Francophonie presence, and whereas the state of New Hampshire is home to tens of thousands of French speakers who contribute positively on a daily basis to the lives and livelihoods of all of its citizens. Now therefore I, Christopher T. Senator, Governor of the state of New Hampshire, do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Francophonie Month and call this to the attention of all of its citizens. Thank you.
My name is Mark Sullivan, and I'm the Executive Director for the Mass Office of International Trade. On behalf of the Baker-Polito administration, I'm privileged to be able to provide comments to acknowledge Francophonie Month in Massachusetts. Francophonie Month provides the Commonwealth the opportunity to publicly acknowledge how all things French are so important to Massachusetts citizens, businesses, and culture. Although we celebrate in March, we live it every day. Our trade with Francophonie countries exceeds billions of dollars annually, and we're a key spot for Francophonie tourism. France, Switzerland, Belgium, Haiti, and Canada are distinguished members of the Massachusetts Diplomatic Corps, and Quebec maintains a trade office in Massachusetts. Therefore, it's always a great pleasure to say to our Francophonie family, bienvenue à Massachusetts. Thank you.
Dear Governors of the 6 New England states, I'd like to warmly thank you for your constant support to promote Francophonie in your states and to celebrate these deep cultural and historical links that we share. On a more personal note, let me tell you that one of the most rewarding aspects of my job as French Consul General here in Boston is to be in contact with you and your teams and see the great leadership you demonstrate, including in the difficult times we've been through.